just occurred.
That's like she tries to slide over right there, and Hartley just kind of falls and makes collision with that lower leg. You see her immediately grab it. And she went down hard and was clearly in a lot of pain.
The arena went silent as Sophie Cunningham collapsed to the floor after a brutal knee collision. Fans gasped, teammates rushed to her side, and yet there was no whistle, no foul, nothing. Within seconds, social media exploded with frustration. Sophie's family took to the internet, blasting the officiating and demanding.
Shot clock down to 6 for the Fever. Turner, up fade. Turner kicks it. Hull three-pointer. Bottom!
Indiana.
7 on the shot clock, 25 seconds in regulation.
I gotta get to the rim.
Charles has to hoist and connects. Wow. The Indiana Fever prove their resiliency.
Ending accountability. And to Indiana fans, this wasn't some isolated accident. It felt like the latest chapter in a disturbing pattern. The dangerous groin hit that sidelined Caitlin Clark, the infamous poke in the eye from J.C. Sheldon, Marina Mabry's reckless foul. Every matchup.
Fever down! Head up in the chat. Yeah. Fever down!
With the Connecticut Sun seemed to leave another Fever player in pain. And now, Cunningham was the latest victim. But if fans thought this was going to break Indiana, they were wrong. Because what followed wasn't collapse. It was the start of one of the most shocking comebacks in franchise history. Before the ball was even tipped, Indiana looked doomed. The Fever came in.
For Phoenix, it was a quick turnaround to figure out, how we're going to play without, Ari and Sid. And now we got to figure out how we're going to play without Soph. And we've got to figure out, who can play in certain roles. What are our substitution patterns going to be? What kind of wrinkles can we throw out there? It doesn't get easier. And I think we come back and have Minnesota twice, right? So it's really good mentally, physically, and emotionally for us. And then it gives us practice time, which we're going to need.
To this game without a single true point guard on the roster. Caitlin Clark still sidelined with the groin injury from mid-July. Sydney Colson gone for the season with a torn ACL. Ari McDonald out with a broken foot. 3 floor generals, 3 leaders, all unavailable. That left head coach Stephanie White with no natural distributor, no organizer, and no safety net. While other teams were polishing their playoff rotations, Indiana had to shred their playbook and rebuild on the fly. Instead of complex sets, White was forced to rely on simplified actions that wouldn't overwhelm players being pushed into unnatural roles. In other words, the Fever weren't strategizing for wins. They were just trying to survive. The game plan wasn't about brilliance. It was about resilience. And little did anyone know that survival mindset was about to be tested in the most brutal way possible. Then came the moment nobody wanted to see. Midway through the second quarter, Sophie Cunningham collided hard with Bria Hartley under the rim. Cunningham immediately clutched her knee, screaming in visible pain as she crumpled to the floor. She couldn't put weight on her leg. Teammates surrounded her. Trainers rushed in. And yet the officials let play continue. Not a single foul was called. The sight was chilling. Sophie had been one of the few sparks in Indiana's patchwork rotation, her toughness and shooting essential to holding things together. Losing her was devastating enough, but for fans, the lack of protection from referees was unforgivable. To them, this wasn't just bad luck. It was another reckless collision in a string of dangerous moments that always seemed to involve the Connecticut Sun. Caitlin Clark's groin injury, Sheldon's eye poke, Mabry's hard foul, and now this. Each time, another Fever player left in pain. Each time, no accountability. To fans, Cunningham's injury wasn't an accident. It was part of a trend. The anger didn't just come from the stands. Sophie's own family took to social media, and their words poured gasoline on the fire. Her sister Lindsay directly called out the WNBA, writing, "Maybe you should focus less on fining players for comments about officiating and more on hiring referees that can actually protect your athletes." Her mother Paula shared a now deleted post calling Hartley mean and out of control. These weren't anonymous tweets from random fans. This was Sophie's family, the people who knew her toughness better than anyone, openly suggesting that the league had failed its players. And they weren't alone. Fans across the internet echoed those frustrations, accusing the Sun of reckless play and demanding the WNBA step up. To them, Sophie's injury was proof of a dangerous environment that wasn't being addressed. This wasn't just a call for sympathy, it was a demand for accountability. And as the fury built, Indiana faced a choice: collapse under the weight of loss, or rise up and use that fire to fight back. What happened next shocked everyone. Instead of folding, the Fever treated Sophie's injury as a rallying cry. Inside the locker room, their mantra became simple: next woman up. It wasn't just words, it was survival. Indiana's bench was thin, rotations were messy, and their leader was gone. But rather than viewing it as an excuse, they saw it as fuel. Every possession became personal. Every loose ball became a battle. Instead of mourning what they lost, they leaned into who they still had. The game turned into a test of grit, of energy, of pure resilience. Fans in the arena expected Indiana to fade, but what they got was something entirely different. The team fed off the anger, the emotion, and the doubt. The crowd could feel the shift. This wasn't just about winning a game anymore. It was about proving they wouldn't be broken. And that spark set the stage for one of the greatest scoring eruptions the Fever have ever seen. Enter Kelsey Mitchell. At halftime, she had just 4 points. By the final buzzer, she had tied her career high with 38. That's not just a turnaround. It's one of the most explosive scoring stretches in WNBA history. Mitchell came out of the break demanding the ball. She attacked every defender, drained jumpers over pressure, and buried clutch threes when the game was on the line. 34 of her points came in the second half, including 10 in overtime. Shot after shot, she dragged Indiana back from the brink. It wasn't wild gunning either. Mitchell was surgical, shooting 11 for 22 from the field, 5 for 8 from deep, and 11 for 12 at the free throw line. And with every bucket, the momentum shifted. By the time overtime arrived, there was no question whose game this was. Mitchell wasn't just scoring, she was making history. Her 38 points pushed her past Tanika Catchings for the most 30-point games in Fever history. Caitlin Clark herself tweeted just 2 words in response: MVP Kels. And for one night, Mitchell looked every bit like the MVP her team desperately needed. Of course, no historic takeover happens alone. While Mitchell carried the scoring load, her teammates delivered in moments that made all the difference. Odyssey Sims, signed on a hardship contract just to keep the roster alive, played like she belonged all season. With 19 points and 7 assists, she broke Connecticut's press, steadied the offense, and ensured Mitchell had the ball in the right spots. In the paint, Aaliyah Boston was her usual dominant self. 14 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 blocks, setting a new franchise record for double-doubles in a season. She wasn't flashy, but her interior presence was the backbone of Indiana's resilience. And then came Lexi Hull. With less than a minute left in overtime, she buried the dagger 3 that slammed the door on Connecticut's comeback hopes. On paper, her 8 points look modest. In context, her shot was everything. Together, these unsung heroes transformed Indiana's chaos into stability, ensuring Mitchell's masterpiece wasn't wasted. The final score: Indiana Fever 99, Connecticut Sun 93. But the numbers only tell part of the story. This wasn't just a win. It was the largest comeback in Fever history. A night where frustration turned into fuel and outrage turned into resilience. More importantly, it raised bigger questions about the state of the WNBA. Fans weren't just celebrating the comeback. They were still demanding answers about officiating, about player safety, and about whether the league would step up to protect its stars. To many, Sophie's injury wasn't just another play. It was a tipping point. The Fever had shown they wouldn't be broken, but should they have had to endure this much just to compete? That's the shadow hanging over the win. Indiana may have proven their toughness, but the controversy ensures that this game will be remembered for more than just a box score. In the end, the Fever turned disaster into history. Sophie Cunningham's injury threatened to crush them, but instead it became the spark for a comeback no one thought possible. Kelsey Mitchell cemented herself as not just a star, but a franchise cornerstone, capable of carrying Indiana when everything else falls apart. Odyssey Sims, Aaliyah Boston, and Lexi Hull proved that depth and grit can change everything when the odds are stacked against you. But beyond the victory, questions still linger. Was this comeback proof that Indiana is building something special? Or will it be remembered as another night where officials failed to protect players? Either way, one thing is certain. This game wasn't just a win. It was a statement. Indiana Fever showed the league and everyone watching that no matter how many injuries, no matter how many controversies, and no matter how many doubts, they refuse to be counted out.